Well, I was bound to get around to this one eventually. I've talked plenty of times in the past about the interesting state the Crash Bandicoot series ended up in after Naughty Dog was no longer at the helm of developing the games. Following a very successful trilogy of platformers and an additionally successful kart racer, the Crash IP ended up being hot potatoed between various developers over the course of the next decade, each providing their own varied take on where to take the series, to varying degrees of success. I've covered a majority of these post-Naughty Dog endeavors in video form over the past few years. Some I've really enjoyed, some I thought were a bit of a mixed bag, and some were just bad. There are a couple other games I've got left to cover in the series though, and for today, I'm here to finally talk about the first of these post-Naughty Dog titles, Crash Bash. To give a quick little history lesson, once Naughty Dog's deal with Universal Interactive was over following Crash Team Racing's release, Universal kept the rights to the Crash IP, while Naughty Dog went on to become a first-party developer for Sony. With new developer Eurocom at the helm now, it was decided that the next Crash game wouldn't be a platformer or a kart racer, but instead a party game, which did make a fair bit of sense to do at the time. The Crash series had found success in playing in Mario's Ball Court in both platformers and kart racers, and Mario Party was proving to be a fruitful spin-off series, so why not follow suit again? And thus we got Crash Bash in November of 2000, making for the final Crash game released on the PS1. And coincidentally was followed only a week later by the release of Sonic Shuffle, Sega's take on the Mario Party formula. Either way, while the Naughty Dog developed Crash games all saw generally positive reception, if not outright critical acclaim, Crash Bash got off a more mixed response from critics and players, something it still generally has to this day. Sure, it's definitely got its fans, some of whom have been especially vocal about wanting a remake, but it didn't get quite the same following the Naughty Dog Crash games or the Mario Party games ended up getting. Now while I did own Crash Bash in my adolescent years, I didn't play it nearly as much as I did some other Crash games, but I guess younger me did enjoy it a lot, given I declared in a now 10-year-old video that I enjoyed it even more than Mario Party.
Oh, Crash Bash. What a fun game. Sometimes, I think it's even more entertaining than the Mario Party games.
Then again, in that same video, I called Toho a space shooter, and tried to critique a symbolic finisher phase as if it were an ordinary boss fight, so yeah, don't listen to him. Point is, I haven't played Crash Bash as much as I have other Crash games, so this revisit's largely going to be a fresh one for me. With that said, let's see how it holds up. Okay, so to start off, I will say, I really enjoy whoever they got as the opening announcer guy. Something about the way he delivers his lines is just really satisfying.
Sony Computer Entertainment America presents a Universal Interactive Studios production.
All this leading up to
Crash Bash!
Yep, that's still got the same punch I remember it having. So the game's story is certainly a story, alright. It starts with Aku Aku and Uka Uka in some space temple arguing over which of them is better. I'm not exaggerating about that.
Uka Uka, how many times must you be told? You cannot defeat me.
I have heard enough of your shallow wisdom. It is I who is the strongest, and it is evil that will ultimately prevail.
Until they finally decide to stop bickering and settle their conflict. Uka Uka tries to do so through a fight, and this happens.
Prepare to fight!
No, Uka Uka. The ancients would not allow it. There can be no malice between us.
On one hand, I could bring up that Aku Aku and Uka Uka literally fight throughout the final battle of Warped, openly contradicting this claim from Aku Aku, but on the other hand, now I'm just imagining the ancients scolding the two masks after their clash in Warped, and telling them to play nice like they're children. I don't know, that's just kind of funny to me. No, Uka Uka, the ancients will ground us. We'll have no Xbox for a month. In any case, the two come to a compromise. Instead of fighting each other, they summon their allies to serve as competitors in a contest to determine whether good or evil is truly stronger. And while Aku Aku summons only Crash and Coco, Uka Uka ends up summoning Cortex and a whole bunch of his minions. This prompts Aku Aku to suggest sending over two from Uka Uka's team so they can play with even team sizes, and thus, Tiny and Dingodile are surrendered over to the hero's side. Ironic that Dingodile would go on to permanently switch to being a good guy in Crash 4. But yeah, that's the overall story. Compete in various battles to help Aku Aku and Uka Uka figure out their feud. Though as you progress through the adventure mode, it becomes apparent that Uka Uka's got an ulterior motive with this competition, using it as an opportunity to gather up the power crystals for his evil plans. Whether Aku Aku catches on or not depends on which team you're playing for. That's actually a pretty interesting element of Crash Bash's story. Depending on if you pick a hero or villain character, the cutscenes you get and the ending you end up with will be different. With Aku Aku revealing that he caught on to Uka Uka's plan and sending him out into space for trying to steal the crystals in the hero ending, and Uka Uka getting the power to successfully take over the world in the villain ending. The story itself may be kind of flimsily put together, but the idea of the ending being different depending on which team you were playing for was a neat touch. Something that only one other Crash game, Crash Nitro Kart, would go on to try after this. As for the character roster, it's a rather interesting one. I've already mentioned how Tiny and Dingodile were voluntold into the hero team, because I guess they felt there wasn't enough hero characters to carry a whole team, and Polar's a key part of one of the minigame types, so they couldn't pull out CTR and bring him and Purah in. But even on the villain team, we've got some fascinating choices, with Cortex, Embryo, Koala Kong, and newcomer Rillaru. Now granted, Embryo and Koala Kong weren't playable in CTR, which is probably why they were prioritized, but even still, it's kind of a strange lineup to represent the villain team for a Crash game. And then there's the matter of Rillaru, the very bizarre original character. Now again, I do understand the logic. The characters all fit into 4 general gameplay archetypes, with 2 per type. Crash and Coco play the same, Cortex and Embryo play the same, Tiny and Koala Kong play the same, so they clearly want someone to pair up with Dingodile. Even still though, this Gorilla Kangaroo hybrid is quite the enigma. So much so that he became something of a meme among Crash fans for many years, especially given this was his only appearance in the series up until CTR Nitro Fueled. Also, if they were willing to create original characters for the roster, they probably could have just made original characters for the heroes instead of making Tiny and Dingodile switch sides, but I'm gonna stop lingering on this. Also, exclusive to the Japanese version, there's a cheat code to unlock Fake Crash as a playable character. Outside of that though, there's no unlockable characters, so hope you're happy with this as your character lineup. As for the gameplay, Crash Bash is, as I noted, a party game, but structured quite differently than Mario Party. In particular, it's just the mini-games. No board game or anything, you just play the mini-games. Though, with many of the game's mini-games being locked by default, we're going to start with Adventure Mode to get them. The Adventure Mode has you going through a multi-floor warp room, each having a set of mini-games to compete in. Winning these will earn you trophies, which are required to access the boss arenas and progress further. There is a rather irritating catch though. These mini-games work off a round-based system, with a point going to whoever wins a round. You're required to win 3 rounds to officially win the minigame, but if any of the AI opponents win 3 rounds, you'll have to restart back at 0. This means that any minigame can be played up to 9 times in a row before you get the trophy. Actually wait, even more than that, because some minigames you can end up in a tie, and no one gets a point in that case. So yeah, because of that, these minigames can very quickly overstay their welcome, even if they're ones that you otherwise enjoy. And that's just with collecting the trophies. Once you're in the second warp room, you're required to also get gems and crystals to unlock the boss. These you get from playing the various minigames again, this time with a twist. The gem challenges put you at some sort of general disadvantage, such as starting you off with less health or requiring you to win in a shorter span of time, while the crystal challenges throw in some sort of gimmick that makes winning that much harder, such as spawning in insta-kill obstacles, or taking away a mechanic just from you while your opponents keep it. Now fortunately, you only need to win 1 round in these gem and crystal challenges, and unlike the trophies, you don't need to get every gem and crystal in a warp room to progress, so you can pick and choose which gem and crystal challenges you do. But even still, it just adds on top of the already tedious process of playing through all these minigames as much as you do. And yes, as many of you are no doubt aware, when you lose in any of the gem or crystal challenges, the game makes sure to tell you in grandiose fashion.
You fail.
And trust me, you'll be hearing this a lot throughout your Adventure Mode run, because many of these challenges get stupid hard. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy a good challenge. Emphasis on the good. Oftentimes, it felt like sheer luck that I managed to win some of these challenges, and while some of them were fine enough times, a majority of the ones I did were just kind of frustrating, which, again, is on top of the already tedious process of having to play all these minigames so many times just to get the trophies. Though there is another factor that makes this process feel so tedious, which brings us to the minigames themselves. On the first floor, you've got 4 minigames to beat. Firstly, Crash Ball, a 4-way Pong match where players lose health points when a metal ball goes into their goal. Last one standing wins. Right out the gate, this minigame's pretty fun. It's simple enough to get a grasp on quite quickly, but with how many metal balls spawn in as the match goes on and how fast they often get, combined with having the ability to reflect them away with a kick of sorts, this one can get really chaotic, but in an enjoyable way. Secondly, we've got Polar Panic. where everyone rides polar bears and tries to shove each other off the platform. You can dash both for getting away and for shoving others, and there's an occasional laser beam that'll either give a buff or a curse to whoever touches it. This one's pretty good. For the third minigame, we've got Pogo Painter, where you bounce around to paint tiles in your color and then break these purple exclamation mark crates to turn your colored tiles into points. There's also pickups that'll spawn in to benefit you, like an arrow that'll turn every tile in front of it in that row into your color, missiles that'll stun your opponents, and speed boots, which are absolutely a necessity because you go at a snail's pace otherwise. On top of that, while the previous minigames went until one player was left standing, this one only ends when the timer hits 0, and each round is a minute and a half. So even if you were to win 3 rounds in a row, you'd be playing this already tedious minigame for nearly 5 minutes straight. And that's assuming the AI don't win any of the rounds. So yeah, long story short, I don't like this minigame. And for the fourth minigame, we've got Jungle Bash, a 3D brawler where you throw crates at your opponents, or attack them directly, to bring their health to 0. Last one standing wins. This is another minigame I really like. Sure, Cortex's Laser Blast attack feels pretty weak in comparison to the attacks the other characters have, but crate throwing helps balance that out. And then to end off the Warp Room, you've got a battle against Papu Papu. It's alright, using the same gameplay structure as Jungle Bash, and having you take out Crash clones before throwing a crate at Papu Papu while his shield's down. Oddly enough, he puts up a better fight here than when you fight him traditionally in Crash 1. Anyway, once you hit him 3 times and watch him accidentally flatten himself, you move on to the second Warp Room. Time to see what new minigames await us.
3, 2, 1.
Oh. Yep, there's that other factor. As if having to play minigame levels multiple times just to get the trophies, let alone the gems and crystals, wasn't repetitive enough, the later Warp Rooms have you play through the same minigames again, just with new environments and new gimmicks thrown in. In the case of the second Warp Room, we've got Beach Ball, which is the same as Crash Ball, but now everyone can grab the metal balls with magnets, which kinda messes with the pacing and makes it less fun. We've got Tilt Panic, which is Polar Panic, but now there's no walls and the platform can tilt. I do admittedly prefer this version over the original. There's Pogo-A-Go, which I will admit that I misunderstood the instructions on this one. Instead of using purple crates to gain points, you have to encircle areas with your color, and I thought they had to be connected to the part of the wall that's your color, which constantly shifts positions throughout the round. But no, supposedly being connected to your wall color only gives extra points. That's my bad for misunderstanding the instructions, but either way, it's Pogo Painter with an annoying gimmick added on, as if Pogo Painter wasn't tedious enough as is. And we've got Space Bash, which is Jungle Bash, but now TNTs and Nitros blow up the ground and create insta-kill pits, which I do think adds a fun chaos to the already fun minigame style. But yeah, you end up just playing the same minigame types again, once again needing to win 3 rounds to get each minigame's trophy, and now requiring the gems and crystals as well to get to the boss. The only new minigame present in the second Warp Room is Desert Fox, a tank-based arena minigame where you fight to be the last man standing in a narrowly structured arena. I've gone on record saying that I really don't like tank-based sections as a whole in games from how slow and clunky they often feel, but this one I found a bit more tolerable. Not amazing, but not terrible either. Fortunately, the boss of the second Warp Room, the Bearminator, is pretty good, using the Polar Bear minigame as a basis, as you take on robot polar bears and then shoot a missile at the Bearminator, all the while he blows up part of your platform after each hit. It's a pretty good challenge. And thus, onto Warp Room 3. And would you look at that? Embolism is another Crash Ball variant, now with annoying trajectory-altering force field pickups that the AI lock onto like hawks, an engine spawning in occasionally to spin out a ton more metal balls. I legit spent over 20 minutes just trying to get the trophy in this minigame. Melt Panic is another Polar Panic variant, now with Uka Uka serving as the laser beam provider, and also melting the platform as the round progresses. El Pogo Loco is another Pogo Painter variant, returning to the exclamation mark crate system, but now with Ripperoo hopping around and placing TNTs on the tiles. Snow Bash is another Jungle Bash variant, this time with ice physics and a sleeping penguin who spins all around if he's woken up. And now we've also got a Desert Fox variant known as Metal Fox, with the walls now shift throughout the round and bomb pickups appear that allow you to shoot over the walls. And once again, we got a single new minigame type in the form of Dot Dash, a racing minigame where you have to complete a set number of laps around a tiny circular track before the others do, all while collecting Wumpa Fruit to use for boosting and using missiles to blast each other off the track. I'm split on this one. The controls and physics are really wonky, and it's way too easy to get put into a stun lock state from enemy missiles. It's chaotic in a way that'd be fun in a casual multiplayer setting, but in the context of adventure mode, it's just kinda irritating. And once again, you'll have to get all the trophies as well as more gems and crystals to progress to the next boss. which just so happens to be the worst boss in the game. I've done my song and dance about the Komodo brothers fight on multiple occasions, so I'll keep it short, but being stuck in the tank against an artillery of quick-moving projectiles with not a ton of room to move around initially, followed by a second phase where you're pitted in a 1-on-2 tank fight, not a fun time. Now granted, it's not quite as much of a nightmare for me as before, now knowing that both friendly fire and self-damaging are a thing, and being easily exploitable in this fight especially, but even still, very much not a fan of this battle. This now brings us to Warp Room 4, and, well, you know the drill. Skyballs is a new Crash Ball variant, this time with a floating arena that tilts as the engines briefly malfunction. Manic Panic is a new Polar Panic variant, this time with bombs that put a player hit by it on foot, and kills them instantly if they're hit by a bomb again. Pogo Padlock is a new Pogo Painter variant, this time with padlock pickups that briefly protect your colored tiles. Also, if you land on a tile of your color, all your tiles are erased. Dream Bash is a new Jungle Bash variant, this time with purple crates that give you power-ups. Jungle Fox is a new Desert Fox variant, this time with a completely open arena. I enjoyed this variant of the tank minigame the most because of that. And Toxic Dash is a new Dot Dash variant that litters the arena with toxic barrels and slime monsters, making it rather annoying to get through. And as for this Warp Room's brand new minigame, we've got Ring Ding, the first of the Medieval Mayhem minigames, which are actually a unique case compared to the other sets. Instead of having the same minigame in different environments, the Medieval Mayhem minigames are the reverse. They're all in medieval environments, but each of the minigames are completely different from one another. Part of me wants to give a good old shout of joy in the presence of some variety, but I didn't end up playing any of the Medieval Mayhem minigames beyond Ring Ding. I'll get into that shortly. And Ring Ding is probably my least favorite minigame in the whole game. You're in a rotating arena with the objective of popping balloons of your color, with pickups that can give you free movement that ignores the rotation, or vacuums that bring all the balloons of your color towards you for a short time. What makes this minigame so aggravating though is the black balloons, which can have a few different effects when popped. They'll either change the direction of the rotation, completely get rid of all the balloons on screen that aren't your color, or turn all the balloons on screen into your color. It makes for a really irritating experience, combined with the weird perspective making it sometimes really hard to pop your balloons if they're further back, and the AI being utterly ruthless when I played it. Anytime I ever got a power-up that benefited me, I'd only get like 2 seconds to use it because one of them would immediately drop everything to hit me, negating the power-up. It was frustrating. And then once you've gotten enough trophies, gems, and crystals, you gain access to the final battle against Oxide of all characters. First chasing him through space with a ton of stuff to avoid, and then taking on him in a one-on-one Pong match, where you also gotta dodge missiles and an insta-kill red metal ball. And once you've beaten him, you get the ending associated with your team, which I will say, there's something kinda hilarious about getting the evil ending where Uka Uka creepily cackles as he now has the power to conquer the world, just to be followed up with a fireworks celebration for the credits. Now there is a 5th Warp Room unlocked after this, but all these minigames are locked behind gems, crystals, and now relics as well, requiring additional repeat playthroughs of all the previous minigames. This is where you can access the other Medieval Mayhem minigames, alongside another variant of Desert Fox, and 2 more variants of Dot Dash, but at that point, I really couldn't be bothered. I got the ending and credits, I was content to stop there. I'm gonna be honest, the single-player experience for this game is infuriating. Sure, some of the minigames in isolation can be fun, but these aren't the kind of minigames that are suited for the repetitious structure of adventure mode. And yet you have to replay these same minigames over and over and over again just to get the trophy, let alone the gem and crystal and later relics if you want to unlock everything. Which yeah, friendly reminder, several of the minigames are locked in multiplayer by default, and there's no cheat codes or anything to get them otherwise. You have to play through adventure mode to get them all. But now that begs the question, is it even that good as a multiplayer experience to make this all worth it? Well, to put it bluntly, yeah, it is. Sure, quite a few of the minigames still aren't great, but when playing them in a casual multiplayer setting, not having to worry about adventure mode progress, there's a lot more fun to be had. Minigames like Dot Dash, for example, are a ton more enjoyable when you don't need to worry about campaign progression. I got a chance to try out the multiplayer with some buddies for this review. Thank you, Parsec, for making that easy to do. And yeah, we had a blast.
This is Splatoon for the criminally insane.
Hey, oh, holy crap, this is Splatoon.
It literally is.
This is Splatoon! I hate it! I hate it! I hate it!
Stop! No!
Burst black balloons to affect the action.
I have to affect the action. Hold on.
Oh, let me affect the action. Oh, I wanted to affect the action right back.
I want to affect the
I'm affecting the action!
I'm affecting the action!
Action become affected.
Mother said it's my turn to affect the action. Yay. Stop looking at me. It feels like you're judging me.
I am judging you. Oh, you need that? Okay, here, you can have it. No, take it back, take it back, take it back.
No, you can have I insist. You love that. You love that so much. No, Cammy, no, what are you doing?
No! Are you kidding me? Excuse me?
Don't worry. I am very not capable of that, so you should worry, actually.
Actually, Ben, you can go back to messing around. I'm sorry.
What? I respawn and immediately get, like, booty bumped out of existence.
What the heck? You're... Okay.
What was the delay there?
Yeah, what the heck?
Actually, on the topic of multiplayer, Adventure Mode's got a co-op option, allowing you and a friend to take on the tedium as a team. I didn't try this myself for this review, granted. One Adventure Mode playthrough was more than enough, and I wasn't about to drag a friend through it as well, but that option's there for those who want to give it a go. And in fact, there's actually a secret final battle if you and your co-op partner pick characters on opposite teams. Not happy with there being no winning side, Aku Aku and Uka Uka force you and your co-op partner to fight each other to determine which ending you get. I kinda love that, to be honest. And speaking of things I love, I think Crash Bash's soundtrack is really solid. It was composed by Steve Duckworth, and he did a really good job with capturing Josh Mansell's style from the previous PS1 games, while still having its own feel. Even with pieces that were directly based on songs from previous games, he did solid arrangements of them that helped make them feel stand out. Though while we're on audio stuff, the voice work is a bit strange. For one, basically none of the original voice cast is present, with the only traces being the occasional reused audio. Cortex's victory laugh is most certainly the one Clancy Brown did for Crash 2's opening. And while Crash has new voice recordings from what seems to be a different voice actor, he does also have his classic from Brendan O'Brien, who sadly passed away earlier this year. May he rest in peace. And a lot of the noises they've got for the other characters sound off, particularly for Coco, Dingodile, and Embryo. MVP of the game voice-wise, though, is the announcer, with his booming voice to count down matches and reveal who wins. And tell you that you failed, of course. But yeah, overall, I think Crash Bash is kind of a mixed bag. They're certainly fun to be had when playing casually in multiplayer, but to get the most out of the multiplayer, you gotta play through the adventure mode, which I really don't like. It's far too repetitive and tedious, not helped by how ridiculously hard some of the challenges can get. To those who have successfully 200%ed adventure mode, yes, it goes up to 200%, I applaud your skill and patience. So yeah, a rather miserable single-player experience, but a pretty enjoyable multiplayer experience. Though to end this review on a lighter note, going back to that now 10-year-old video I mentioned at the start, some of you may recall from that video that I made a little song out of all the times you'll hear the "you fail" from losing to the Komodo brothers fight.
Heck, you can make a song using every single time you hear that. And I did just that.
Well, I may not have lost enough times to the Komodo brothers to warrant doing that again, but I definitely heard it enough across my whole playthrough. So, without further ado...
3, 2, 1, go! You fail. 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 You fail.
Special shout out to my friend Megan for helping put the audio for that together. Definitely sounds better than it used to. Anyway, that's now another Crash game done and covered. Only a handful left to go, but I'll save those for another time. With that said, this has been BenjaMage. Thank you all for watching, and until the next video, have a nice day, everybody.